Marnin!
Madnin!
Welcome to the India Explained podcast, recorded in London and San Francisco. One take, unscripted, no rehearsal.
Hey Rohit, hope things are good with you. I just wanted to pick up a quick story that's come to. In fact, you brought this to my attention the other day when we were exchanging messages. This is about a man who makes a lewd gesture. This is a Hindustan Times story. This is about a man who makes a lewd gesture at an airport on the 5th of July, and he doesn't know what is about to hit him. So, why don't you tell our listeners what actually the story is about, and then we can talk a bit more about it?
Right, so the story it's in Hindustan Times, July 5th by Faizan Haidar. Man makes lewd gesture at undercover woman cop at Delhi airport, comma gets arrested. And for some odd reason, the editor has put lewd gesture in single quotes, scare quotes. A man from
Hmm.
Punjab uh, who was on his way to New York,
Right.
was arrested for making a lewd gesture at a woman CISF cop posted on duty in plain clothes. So the man was arrested. Preliminary investigation found that he was drunk. And Kuwait Airways flight, and the lady was the cop. She was in duty in plain clothes. Had been posted Terminal 3 to keep an eye out for suspicious passengers. Other point, man was 50 years old, in his 50s. Not that that mattered. So yeah, I mean, why don't you like share your thoughts about this? I'll just like mention two things. One is there is a kind of license that people think they have in India when they're drunk.
Yeah.
When the idea is that I was drunk, so I misbehaved, I molested someone, I made a lewd gesture, so because I was drunk, I can't be held responsible. And that understanding permeates law enforcement, judges, society at large, in the reactions we have to alcohol and so on. That the alcohol is taken to blame for anyone's actions, and almost as if people don't have agency. The other context where this happens is that when people are flying, people across caste, class, religion, in the Indian context seem to misbehave. There was some story I remember a couple of years ago, maybe, about a guy who was a very senior executive in a multinational Indian
Right.
guy who was misbehaving with some woman. He was molesting her, and she recorded the thing, and then he was very ashamed, or he said he was sorry and so on. But I doubt if he was. I think he was only sorry that he'd been caught out. So drunkenness, license to misbehave, molest, etc. Airlines license, flying license to misbehave, etc. Drunk and flying, double license. And of course, this guy got a this guy got a cheap shock, and it's good. I mean, I hope the guy serves some jail time. So,
I think Kuwait Airways
yeah,
is an odd airline. I came close to flying Kuwait Airways once, but in the end, discretion was the best part of valor. I have never flown Kuwait Airways. I'm curious about it. It's one of those airlines, like, would you fly an airline like Kuwait Airways? That would be my first question. Okay. Put that aside. That's my personal bias. Man from Punjab, as I read the information, he basically, here's what it says. Here's what the report notes. He casually approached our woman constable who was in plain clothes. He started chatting with her, and soon he started misbehaving.
hmm,
I think that what makes me curious is if what probably threw this guy was because this lady was in plain clothes, right? He didn't know she was a police officer hiding. So he did what he would, I'm assuming, normally do
yeah,
with women, approach them for a conversation. And probably the place where he comes from, when a man approaches a woman to have a conversation, they run in the other direction because that's the kind of social space that he inhabits. This woman, who's a trained police officer, clearly didn't do that. So he probably got into some kind of chit chat. So because the lady answered some of his questions without running away or showing any sign of distress, he took that to be an invitation
hmm,
to take matters further. Because I think in the Punjabi worldview, and I'm saying this very loosely and as a very bunty generalization, this man from Punjab who's going to Kuwait, to New York on Kuwait Airways, I'm assuming has a particular worldview, and that worldview has a particular place for women in it. And this woman confused him, and I'm not trying to defend him, by just having a normal conversation. The
right.
point that I'm trying to make is that in India, we forget that the vast amount of public space is a male chauvinistic space,
Hmm.
right? Where if a woman engages in a normal conversation with a man, right, it is taken to be consent to take matters further,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah.
So the second point that you're making is, suppose this guy had got onto an aeroplane. We are putting alcohol aside for this side for the moment,
Hmm.
and we are also putting the quality of the airline
Hmm.
because those are distractions.
Hmm.
The other point that you've raised, Rohit, is people's interactions
Hmm.
when in public spaces.
Hmm.
When you are living in a society where interaction between men and women are so loaded, and
Hmm.
often, and 99% of the time, in favor of men,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It makes people fearful. Therefore, this lady was a cop. She took action on this guy and sorted it out. But the concern is for women who are professionals from all sections and segments of life, who are traveling by themselves, using public transport, using commercial transport,
Hmm.
and trains. We talk about aeroplanes here and flights and airports, which is kind of, as things go, as social spaces go, it's probably one of the most scrutinized social spaces because of the risk of terrorism, etc. There's cameras, security infrastructure. Think of the countless number of times this happens in public spaces which are less monitored, less
Hmm.
scrutinized, like
Right, right.
stations, bus stops, etc. So I think the main point here is, okay, the comedy value of this story is that this guy got slammed by a lady police officer unbeknownst to him. But I think it's interesting for us to draw out, as you say, how the dynamics of men interacting with women play out,
Hmm.
and the implications of that. And how long do we have to wait before a woman who's conducting public service or is in public space in India can just behave normally and not feel that it's an open invitation for hassle?
Yeah, no, I think
So
you've
those are my.
yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly what it is. I recall some discussion on Twitter a while ago where a lady was just sharing her experience of, I think she said, at some point of time, perhaps when she was a college student traveling by bus, or I don't know, maybe she was in the workforce at that point of time, traveling by bus in Delhi. She said inadvertently, she just happened to make eye contact at some person, and uh, the just, I think, gave him a cordial smile or something, and the guy, then when she got off, he followed her around, and she said that she was so unnerved that she walked for a very, very long time because she didn't want this guy coming anywhere near her workplace or near her residence, so that, finally shrugged him off. So this is why women are told not to make eye contact, not to laugh, etc. Because how, bums and riffraff interpret it, it's exactly along the lines, that you mentioned. And yeah, and I think it has something to do with the North Indian worldview. I know that the South Indian states or other places aren't perfect, but certainly, you have these kinds of incidents happening in cities like Bombay and so on, and increasingly now in Calcutta. Though my memory, admittedly, it was a very partial memory, but my memory I had of Calcutta as a child was that it was a very safe city as a woman. It was certainly the only city I've seen where people actually used to get up in buses and give women their seats, women's seats and so on. But there is some truth to the fact that this is a kind of North Indian uh, sickness, really. And you can take the guy out of Punjab, but I'm not sure you can take Punjab out of the guy, is what I would say. But I think the other thing I just mentioned is that it points to the need to have a just make public space much more inclusive in all kinds of ways, and b have a lot more women cops everywhere,
Correct.
because I think male cops are often very guilty of this themselves, to be
Right, right.
candid.
Absolutely. Look, we've talked about this for a while. This is an interesting story which pulled out very interesting vistas for us. Hope our listeners enjoyed it. I think we really appreciate your comment on Twitter at India Explained, via email at the India Explained podcast at gmail.com, and on our YouTube channel India Explained. We don't have a channel as such because we're working towards it. The things have to get finalized, but stay in touch. Keep us